phase.
Wait, what? I had no idea about that. Imagine if they were actually like, alright, we dropped this entire idea. I had no idea. That's crazy. Alright, so today's video we are gonna watch is SM64 Did You Know Gaming. I've actually seen a few videos from this channel, but I have not seen the SM64 one. So I bet there is quite a few things I also didn't know, despite playing this game for quite some time now. But let's see what little, secret facts there are about this game that probably I and probably you guys also didn't quite know. So let's get started.
Here we go!
Did you know? One of Shigeru Miyamoto's earliest influences for Super Mario 64 came from watching his pet hamster wander around his room. This experience likely influenced not only the size of Mario 64's stages, but its free-roaming camera as well. He was also inspired by miniature train sets and dioramas, but Miyamoto's first thoughts about a 3D Mario came years earlier while working on the original Star Fox. His team experimented with a prototype based on the SNES Super FX chip, but the technology just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah. I mean, a lot of people probably know this, but a lot of people also probably don't know this. I actually do have a hamster, and I've had quite a few in the past. Maybe this is a sign that, in the future we'll create the next SM64. We have the experience playing the game, and we have the same experience of having a hamster. I mean, maybe it's a sign. I don't know. That's funny though, I had no idea about that.
It ended up taking 5 more years for Miyamoto's vision to become a reality. Mario 64 was the first Nintendo 64 game to enter development. In fact, work began long before the N64 actually existed. So the developers started by making prototypes on a computer and keyboard. They didn't have a proper controller for the next 6 months, so they modified some Sega controllers for testing. These controllers were likely XE1AP Sega Genesis controllers, which had an analog stick years before the N64, PlayStation, or Sega Saturn were even conceived. About 100 different N64 controllers were developed by Nintendo R&D3, and each controller was tested with Mario 64 to see if it was up to scratch.
Dude, that's actually interesting because I always say when I run this game, as a kid, I was never the biggest fan of N64 controllers, but for SM64, it's almost like, I've always said it feels like the controller, N64 controller, was designed with SM64 as like the main reason. Because the N64 controller honestly feels super good for SM64. But in general, I was never the biggest fan. So I mean, yeah, I guess that kind of confirms what I did believe.
According to R&D3's manager Genyo Takeda, they became more ambitious with each new controller, even prototyping a motion sensor wristwatch. The watch worked so well that they actually filed for a patent. However, when the wristwatch was playtested by a focus group full of kids, they were confused by how it worked. In the end, R&D3 had to abandon the idea. Did you know?
Good shit, kids. Good shit. Means we got probably a better way of playing the game.
Gaming asked Mario 64 programmer Giles Goddard about the prototype controllers and if there was anything memorable from Nintendo's tests. Goddard said, "There was one prototype joystick I worked on that stood out. It was made by a UK company, I think, and it had the ability to programmatically constrict movement in 2 axes. I thought we could use it to give force feedback or to give texture to certain movements, but when I made some test demos with it, it felt more like it was stuck on something instead. Still, it was way ahead of its time as there was no such thing as haptics back then." Ultimately, they settled on the N64 controller we know today, even though Miyamoto was still dissatisfied with it, and actually wanted a second D-pad instead of the C buttons. The game's
that would have been so annoying for camera. That's actually like the biggest reason the N64 controller is so good for this game, especially when you like speedrun it. Yo, Sanaku, thank you for 31 months. Twitch Prime, thank you. Like, one of the biggest reasons I really like the N64 controller for speedrunning SM64 is the C buttons. It makes navigating the camera so amazing. And yeah, also the N64 D-pad is like not really that strong to begin with. So yeah, for this game it would have been a bad idea. I would say. So I'm happy they went with the C buttons. I mean, of course, it can sometimes be hard to compare, like, oh, you haven't, like, if it's like, oh, this is how it could have turned out and you haven't tested it, of course, it's, like, easier to, like, maybe be more okay with what you have because you know exactly how it works. But, yeah, in this case, a D-pad, especially if it's the same as the regular D-pad on the N64 controller, that would have been very bad for camera control in SM64.
Started out as just Mario running around an empty grid, with the next character added being Mips the Rabbit. From there, the team spent months just perfecting Mario's movements and the game's camera, ironing out these fundamentals before they built even a single stage. Assistant director Yoshiaki Koizumi made nearly 250 different Mario animations, about 50 of which got cut, including a somersault that probably broke Mario's fall after a long drop. A few animations didn't get cut, but ended up virtually useless, like the crouching trip kick, which Koizumi says he made for beating specific enemies that never got the crouching trip kick, which Koizumi...
That crouch animation, you actually use that for the bomb flip strat. So good shit leaving it in. Quicker bomb clip. First star I do in the route. Second star that the pro route does in 70. So thank God.
Zumi says he made for beating specific enemies that never got programmed into the game. To test out different camera systems, developers ran experiments like creating a mountain and having Mario and Mips race to the summit, then switching the camera and going again. They tested out thousands of different camera systems, having it locked, having it move, having it so the player controlled it entirely, and so on. There was one programmer whose whole job was just working on the camera system, and one day he finally came up with a camera Miyamoto was happy with. But it wasn't long before a Nintendo lawyer ran upstairs and told them Sega had a patent for switching cameras, which sent shockwaves through the entire office.
Really?
They investigated what sort of legal consequences they might face by using Sega's patent, but ultimately decided to throw caution to the wind and use it anyway, praying they wouldn't get sued. And they never did. Mario's face...
Wait, what? I had no idea about that. Imagine if they were actually like, alright, we dropped this entire idea. I had no idea. That's crazy. Yeah, that really is crazy. That would have changed everything if they actually like went through with like removing how the camera worked for this game. Yeah, that would be wild. It seems strange that you can patent a way of moving the camera, but I mean, I guess you can for most things. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but yeah, it really seems like you can patent pretty much anything. The camera for SM64 has a lot of hate from like casual players. Maybe not as much at the time when it came out, but people like picking up the game again. I personally feel like the camera in SM64, it's a tricky one at first once you're like a casual or new to the game, but once you know how to use the camera, it's actually amazing. That might sound weird, and someone that might pick up the game like right now and be like, oh yeah, this camera sucks, but it's like a learning curve. I feel like a little bit in a sense it's like Melee, where movement when you don't know what you're doing, it feels very bad. It feels slower because you don't really know what you can do with the resources you have, right? And I feel like very similar with SM64's camera. That is probably very annoying once you don't really know how to use it, but once you do know, it's honestly amazing.
On the game's title screen was originally made for a prototype of Mario Paint 3D, which ultimately released as Mario Artist Paint Studio on the 64DD. The game's main menu has an interesting origin as well. It's directly based on an SGI graphics demo called Buttonfly. SGI machines were used to make N64 games, and the machine's tools clearly had an influence on how Mario 64 was made. Another influence for Mario 64 was licensed asset packs. Nintendo used sound libraries from the company's Sound Ideas, which can be heard prominently in early versions of the game. Some early clips used samples of Looney Tunes actor Mel Blanc for Mario's voice. The game's art director was also influenced by these asset packs. Several researchers have combed countless archives and asset packs to find Mario 64's original textures. Many of Mario 64's textures come from the Japanese Material Dictionary Datacraft series, which have hundreds of photos of natural and man-made objects. This use of stock imagery might also be why the background of the shifting sandland features the Great Pyramids of Giza, and why the wet dry world uses a photo of Casares, Spain. Many textures also come from SGI workstations the game was developed on, such as the texture for Metal Mario. When it came time to build a Mushroom Kingdom, stages were designed on a fixed path with a flagpole at the end, just like classic 2D Mario stages. But the team decided it'd be more fun if players could wander around freely, like Miyamoto's Hamster exploring his room, so they replaced the flagpoles with a series of stars. This also freed up cartridge space and reduced the level design workload. The designers...
I gotta say, that's so wholesome. That's so wholesome. The whole hamster arc making the game much more free in that sense. That you don't need to read like a certain like flagpole to like finish the stage. It's really trying to make us more like hamsters. That's pretty cute. That's pretty cute.
Didn't use blueprints when making levels, instead adding and subtracting from levels until they felt right. The first stage made was Babomb Battlefield, which originally had a river running through it. But when the team playtested it, they realized the river's current was too strong and could be frustrating, so they drained all the water and left a dry valley in its place. Programmer Hajime Yajima wanted stages to have destructible terrain, which the game would remember. One example he gave was the player destroying a block, and the game remembering the block was gone for the entire playthrough. According to programmer Giles Goddard, half the team was focused on developing, while the other half just focused on playtesting. They even brought in some children, including Miyamoto's own son, to playtest Babomb Battlefield and see what they thought. As a director, Miyamoto was happy to see the kids were all having fun, but as a parent, he was concerned to see his son trying to run up an unclimbable hill over and over again. After a few dozen attempts, Miyamoto started to wonder about his son's intelligence.
Oh no, oh shit. Oh shit. I mean, you gotta give props to the kid for keep trying. And the thing is, if you keep holding A, once you run up, like hills where you can't normally run up, you can kick your way up through. So if the kid keeps testing long enough, he might actually have made it up there. I'm actually happy he did not, because they probably would have removed it. They probably didn't know about that then. That you can like, yeah, hold A, run up like an hill. At least most like sections like that. And then you can like kick your way through upwards. You can't have enough speed while doing it though, because then Mario died. But yeah, they might not even have known it themselves then. I'm actually not sure. There's no way I will ever know for certain. But still. Good shit to Miyamoto's kid for not figuring that out.
A couple months later, co-director Takashi Tezuka told Nintendo Power they'd already made 32 stages, and the final game might even have 40, plus bonus areas like the Princess's Secret Slide. However, the stage count ended up being scaled back, and the final game only had 15 stages.
Holy
the
shit.
overall difficulty was dialed back too. According to Miyamoto, there was a change late in development which made gaps easier to jump than in 2D Marios, as the team worried players might have a hard time judging distances in 3D. This provoked a lot of booing from the staff, who felt strongly that the game's difficulty should remain intact. A large portion of Mario 64's development overlapped with the...
Yeah, dude, now I'm actually very curious to see how these remaining 15 to 25 levels actually looked like. I wonder if there's ever been like any showcase of some of these levels, or if some of these levels made it into future Marios instead. I don't have the most knowledge on that, so yeah, not sure.
The production of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, resulting in lots of ideas originally meant for one game getting switched to the other. Mario 64 had more puzzles than any previous game in the series, with areas like Shifting Sandland's Pyramid feeling more like a Zelda dungeon than the Mushroom Kingdom. That's because many puzzles were actually made for Ocarina of Time, but were moved over to Mario due to its development being behind schedule. Taking assets from Zelda and putting them in Mario 64 was an easy way to speed up development. Even the castle system itself was initially meant for Zelda, but got repurposed for Peach's castle.
Yeah, some of it probably got removed due to limited
The Nintendo
storage.
64 and its 3 launch titles were originally scheduled to release at Christmas 1995, but the launch date was delayed twice, so Miyamoto had more time to flesh out Mario 64. When the game finally launched in June 1996, critics praised it for setting a new standard in gaming. It eventually sold 12 million copies, making it the best-selling N64 game ever, and spawned a whole
SM64, best-selling N64 game. Melee, best-selling GameCube game. We have such good taste in this stream. Just gotta say.
generation of copycats, a long-running trend Miyamoto chalked up to Nintendo's culture. He said, "I believe we are not making Japanese games, but are making Kyoto games. The taste of a Kyoto game is different from that of a Tokyo game. We Kyotoites hate to follow the fashion, but rather love to set the fashion."
Yo,
We
Trill, thank you
did
for the
want
43
to change
months.
the culture of gaming, and it was in that spirit that we made Mario 64. In Miyamoto's view, this explains Nintendo's devotion to innovation and forging their own path, while Sega and Sony's Tokyo-based competition always left them following the trends. Despite all the delays, Mario 64 actually had the quickest development cycle of any game in the series, and the stress took a heavy toll on Nintendo's staff. The entire game was made by just 15 people, and afterwards 2 of them were so burnt out they quit programming and never worked on another video game ever again. It was the end of an era for Miyamoto as well. Mario
I mean, they
64
retired
was
on
the
top.
last time he sat in
They
the
retired on
director's
top.
chair. In the
Hard
25
to
years
top
since, he's only
SM64.
worked as a producer, supervising the work of directors and their teams. When Mario 64 first launched in Japan, it
Yeah,
cost
it's a bit sad, though.
9,800
It's a bit
yen,
sad.
roughly $100. Miyamoto winced at the price.
But yeah, at least they did a really good job. But I mean, of course, work culture in Japan especially can be really brutal. So yeah, I mean, most people not from Japan probably can't really relate. But yeah, you actually often hear that with like game developers.
And went on record saying Mario 64 should have been closer to $60, which ultimately became the price when it launched in America 3 months later. The American version fixed some bugs and had other small updates, like Mario saying hello on the start screen and rambling in his sleep about spaghetti and ravioli. In the original Japanese version, the princess didn't talk at all. For the American update, they added the voice of Leslie Swan, the senior editor of Nintendo Power magazine, and also had her localize the game's text. 10 months later, Japan got their own update of Mario 64, the Rumble Pack compatible version, Shindo Pakutayo. As the name implies, the biggest update was a new Rumble feature, which stayed exclusive to Japan. The updates from the US version were brought over as well, with more bug fixes. The developers also let players summon 40 copies of Mario's face on the game's title screen, but even after all the updates and extra development months, Miyamoto still wished he had more time.
And then they show this stupid star. I mean, I'll always be a little bit pissed at this updated version fixing the glitches and bugs. So they remove BLJs, right? They remove BLJs so you can't like get past the endless stairs and stuff, which have zero impact on any person playing the game casually. Zero impact. But then this shitty ass star and the manta rings that have like basically where you see the ring and where you can actually collect the rings past the like first 5 or at least first 6, because ring number 6 is still okay, but after ring number 6 they are so far away from the actual circle you see, and there is no way they didn't know that, because no casuals are collecting the first 5 rings. They're probably gonna start collecting at like ring 3 at earliest. So casuals would like mess up this star and like probably rip their hair out being frustrated. But yeah, I mean, that didn't get fixed. Grabbing bottom of poles, so you need to like mash fast as fuck to like grab onto poles. No, we're not fixing that either. So like things that genuinely actually impacted casuals playing this game were still there. But BLJs that did not impact casuals didn't even know about it. I mean, there wasn't even a speedrun scene for the game, but I mean, yeah, they probably felt like, oh, this like makes the game look less complete or whatever, but I don't know. When you have things that objectively probably pissed off casuals, I mean, this stupid star still pissed me off sometimes. It still pissed me off that I have to like mash to grab onto poles if I grab them at the bottom. And that's also something like casuals must have experienced. So I mean, yeah, I just don't understand Nintendo mindset often. Like, if they truly cared about casuals, they would have fixed those two things at the very least. I don't think there's any chance they could have missed the Manta Ring Star. I don't think there's any chance. And probably not the poles either. Sure, the Lakido Bounce pole, of course they never went for that setup. But the pole in Bits, not impossible. They probably did test it at some point, or some pole at least. But even if not, Manta Rings, yeah, no way they didn't know. No way.
Mario was the first game developed for the N64, so the team hadn't figured out how to take full advantage of the technology. Ultimately, lots of content was cut, including 3 separate modes incorporating Luigi. One was a split-screen mode where Mario and Luigi started on opposite ends of the castle and ended up meeting in the middle. Another mode was more like a traditional co-op, with the camera pulling back to fit both players on one screen. Earlier versions of the game were even called Ultra 64 Mario Brothers, referencing Luigi's inclusion and the N64's original name, the Ultra 64. Due to programming difficulties, Luigi got cut just months before Mario 64 hit store shelves. The team tried to make up for it by adding a Mario Bros style minigame with Luigi, but this was cut as the N64 was only bundled with one controller, making multiplayer a rarity for most players at launch. Immediately after wrapping up Mario 64, Miyamoto started talking about a sequel. In May 1996, he told reporters, "I couldn't put everything into Super Mario 64 that I really wanted, so we've decided to continue working toward a sequel, which will take about a year and a half at least. For Super Mario 64, I believe we have utilized only 60% of the whole capacity of the N64 technology." He later dubbed the sequel Mario 128 and told fans a prototype was sitting on his desk that had Luigi as a playable character, but he wasn't satisfied just bringing back cut content from Mario 64 and was exploring 4-player split screen like in Mario Kart 64. The sequel would change the gameplay, add more enemies, and retool the presentation. Miyamoto wanted to shake off Mario's just for kids image by ditching his then iconic peace sign and having him stop smiling and laughing so much for no good reason. He even did an interview in Japanese Playboy Weekly to hype it up, telling Playboy that Mario 128 would offer a fresh new experience. But in the end,
that sounds so non-Nintendo. That sounds so non-Nintendo. I still can't actually believe that's like part of this, the history around the Sim64 about like a potential sequel. I just can't imagine it. That sounds so non-Nintendo. If he tells me in the next 10 seconds that it's a troll, I would be much more like, yeah, that sounded like such a troll. Honestly, after this video is over, I probably still will believe it's a troll.
The sequel was never finished and footage of it was never made public. All the cut content from Mario 64, along with all Miyamoto's brand new ideas, were either recycled into other games or left on the chopping block. Did you also know?
Damn, that's actually I wish we at some point got like a leak including all of like those 15 to 25 remaining stages. That would be cool. Maybe some of it has been leaked at some point and I just don't know, but yeah. I mean, it would be hard to top SM64, but it would be cool to like at least see what ideas they had in mind. But yeah, it was a pretty cool video. Some surprising facts in there as well. Hopefully you guys learned something new with this video as well. But yeah, good video, good video. Did you know gaming has a lot of good videos as well? Not only about, yeah, SM64 now, but many other games. So recommend checking them out.